Before I get started with this video, I just want to say thank you to everyone for getting this channel to 1,000 subscribers. My channel blew up so fast thanks to that one video that I posted, and I just could not believe the amount of support for myself and this channel. So thank you to everyone who made this possible and to everyone who subscribed. And with that out of the way, let's get on to the movie review. Oh, the good old messy DCEU. How's it going, fellow cinephiles? This is Dominic from Film Overload, the channel where we talk about movies, pop culture, and everything in between. I just got back from seeing the newest film in the DC catalog, and that is The Flash. I have a very love-hate relationship with the DCEU. I'm not much of a DC comic book reader, so the DCEU was really my first experience with some of the main storylines and the main characters. And The Flash really just felt like another one of those generic DCEU films. Major disclaimer, I have not personally read the Flashpoint comic book that this film is based off of. I'm familiar with some of the events that happen in the comic book, but I have not yet read the entirety of the comic book arc. So this film is really my first kind of experience, so to speak, with the Flashpoint story. So all my thoughts that I have for this film will purely be based off of the film I just watched and not so much the Flashpoint comic book to compare because I have not yet read the comic. The story in this movie I thought was a little hit or miss. The story is just kind of all over the place. There isn't really much of a structure either with this movie. I just wish maybe there was a little bit more thought behind the storytelling process of this film. I really felt distant from the story for some reason. I didn't really feel any moment throughout the course of the film where I felt like, oh, this is actually really interesting. It just kind of floats from start to finish, and that really kind of bothered me during the course of watching this film, and it really hurt some of the actually good elements of this film also. And yes, I understand Barry is trying to save his family that he lost within the course of a day, but that really doesn't justify some of the decision making that Barry has in this movie. Maybe in the writer's room they could have cleared up these maybe inconsistencies, you can probably call them. There are scenes in this movie and points throughout the course of the movie where you really feel like you're understanding everything, and then there's points in this movie where it feels like you don't understand a single thing that the characters are saying or trying to convey. And that just kind of shows you just how much of a production hell that this movie went through. There has been numerous stories out there about just how awful the production was trying to make this movie and how long it took them to make this movie, and it kind of shows, which is really unfortunate. Now, if there's any positives in this movie for me, it has to be the humor. I actually caught myself laughing a couple times throughout the course of this movie, and there's some bits in there that are genuinely pretty funny, but there are also some bits in there that are just super cringy and just make you shake your head out of just pure cringe, in my honest opinion. But the humor that did work was actually really well done. And again, I caught myself laughing a couple times throughout the course of this movie, and I did not expect that at all. So the humor in this is decent, but it's really hit or miss. And not only did the writing hurt the story, it also hurt the character development, in my opinion. I thought Ezra Miller, he was fine. He did what he could with what he was given. Nothing special, nothing too bad either. Was not a fan of what they do to him in this movie, and you'll figure out what they do with him in the first 20 minutes, but I won't go into it because of spoilers. But I thought Barry as a character was rather interesting in this movie, and again, wasn't great, but wasn't bad either. He carries a lot of the movie's humor. I thought the humor through him was actually rather decent. I caught myself laughing a couple of times of some of the things he was saying. But I felt like Barry's arc was kind of incomplete. I don't know why it felt like that, but it did. And again, I wish that maybe through the writer's room, they really maybe had Barry have a little bit more solid of a character arc. I could see what they were trying to go for with him, but for me personally, it just didn't work all the way. I thought that Supergirl, or whoever you want to call her, she was fine. She wasn't bad, she wasn't great, she was just fine. The actress was fine, her writing was mediocre, but that's the majority of this film, to be honest with you. She didn't seem like a total douche, like a lot of female superheroes are now being portrayed in film and television. She didn't have like the super cocky or arrogant personality, which kind of shocked me. But she wasn't a great character. She was just there to fill a need, really, for the plot to continue. So I didn't really get much of a connection with her throughout the course of this film either. Alright, moving on to why you're all here and why I was there, and that is Michael Keaton returning to the role of Bruce Wayne / Batman.
I'm Batman.
I'll say this till the day I die. Michael Keaton saves this movie. If it was not for Michael Keaton in this movie would be an absolute disaster, or even more of a disaster than it already is. I really enjoyed what they did with Michael Keaton in this movie. I thought that he had a interesting story arc for his character. I thought that he supplied the right amount of like nostalgia, so to speak. I really thought that it was cool seeing him back in the suit, even though I wasn't alive when the first movie of his came out. But I really did enjoy Michael Keaton in this movie. A little bit underused in my opinion, but I really liked his presence a lot in this movie. As far as villains go, I thought that Zod was fine. Michael Shannon melts right back into this role, but again, he felt a little bit underused and only served as a ploy to push the plot forward. And I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of his character, but from what we saw from Michael Shannon, I thought he was halfway decent. Now, I have to admit, this movie does take its sweet time getting to those points that you are all paying to see. This movie takes a long time to get to those really entertaining and thrilling moments, and this movie just kind of coasts from start to finish. I also was not the biggest fan of this film's CGI. There's a couple of moments in here where it looks halfway decent, but the CGI for the most part was not that great. But that's just modern superhero movies in general for you nowadays. The CGI just does not look great, and for the majority of this film, it did not look great at all. So now the question that you might be asking yourself, is this movie super nostalgia bait? Without going into spoilers, yes. This movie is incredibly nostalgia bait. It totally banks off of its last 50 minutes or so to really sell the audience that this is a good movie, because that's how long it takes to get to that really entertaining part of the film. There is a lot of cameos in here, a lot of surprising cameos in this movie as well that I can't go into because of spoilers. So if you are a big fan of nostalgia, then this movie might actually work for you. But if you roll your eyes at the concept of nostalgia, then this movie might come off as a bit boring. Overall, The Flash is another mediocre superhero movie in the modern era. A film that had a lot of potential to be good, but fell at the wayside because of how disastrous DC is at the moment and how disastrous DC was when they put this movie into production. It's saved by a couple of chuckles here and there and the presence of Michael Keaton, but if you're looking past those two elements of the film, then this movie might come off as really boring. And I, for one, found it to be humorous, but messy. So that's it. And guys, if you liked this content and want to see more forms of content like it, like Flash, be as quick as you can and hit that like button. Also hit subscribe while you're at it and turn on the bell notifications so that you guys can get notified every single time I post a video. You can follow me on Letterboxd, which is right here. I post all of my movie reviews on Letterboxd as it helps me keep track of movies that I have watched, movies that I haven't watched, and movies that I will watch. And I think you guys would benefit greatly from this app and this website if you are indeed lovers of cinema like myself. As always, guys, happy movie watching. Take care.